Hey guys, welcome to Spirit Pig. This is the show that explores how to live a fulfilled life. I'm Duncan CJ, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Michael Shermer. Michael has an MA in Experimental Psychology and a PhD in the history of science. He's the founder and publisher of Skeptic magazine. He's an author of multiple titles, including The Moral Arc: How Science and Reason Lead Humanity Towards Truth, Justice and Freedom, as well as The Believing Brain and The Science of Good and Evil. He's appeared on shows such as The Colbert Report, Larry King Live, and his 2 TED Talks have been viewed by millions of people all around the globe. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to be here.
Now, I was going through all your sort of talks and being on your website and being on Skeptic Report, and I mean, one thing which I've been kind of like wondering for a while, and I know that you mentioned it, is that we are living in the most moral and peaceful time in human history. And however, if we turn on the news, it's very easy to believe that Armageddon is literally just around the corner. Like, why?
Yep.
Why do you feel this is?
Well, first of all, our senses are geared toward immediate and emotionally salient events. So shark attacks, terrorist attacks, the economy yesterday. In other words, homicides, wars, things that make the nightly news. We follow the headlines instead of the long-term trend lines. And it's the media's job to report on those things, of course, and they should, and we should pay some attention to the daily news. But if you want to ask, are things getting better or are things getting worse, you can't look at the media. You can't follow the daily news. You have to really look at the long-term trends over the course of years, decades, or centuries, which is what I try to do in the moral arc, and show that, of course, there's little ups and downs. It's like the global warming curves, it's up, down, up, down, up, down, but the overall sawtooth blade is going up. It's getting warmer. So even though there might be a few cooler years, the overall trend is warmer. So same thing, even though some years like Chicago, we had the most homicides that we've had in a couple of decades. That's a short-term downturn in one area. The long-term trend is a decline in homicides in almost all cities in most parts of the world. Even though you have places like Syria where you have a civil war, the number of civil wars has declined in the last half century, so that's kind of what I mean about looking at the long-term trends, taking the big picture look. And not saying things are perfect or, there's no problems or we're nearing perfection. I'm not. In other words, it's not utopia, but it's not dystopia either.
Okay, so I mean, and also with, I guess, the rise of the internet, you got Twitter, you got the 24-hour news cycle. We are so focused on the immediate, it's often hard to actually have a bit of perspective and say, actually, things are they're okay.
That's right. Yeah. So, and a deeper reason for this is evolution and the second law of thermodynamics. That is, there's a famous paper called the second law of thermodynamics is the first law of human psychology, by which the authors meant that the natural state of things is for things to run down, entropy, for things to disintegrate, not to naturally build up. And so our psychology is geared toward preventing that. That is trying to find food to eat rather than our bodies just disintegrating and withering away. Trying to find a warm place to sleep, like a cave or a tree or something, rather than freezing to death. Because the natural state with entropy is for your body to get colder, so you have to ingest calories for it to stay, stable, at a stable temperature. So most of our psychology is geared toward preventing bad things from happening, preventing entropy. So we're naturally more focused on negative things than positive things. There are many more ways for things to go bad than there are for things to go good. And for things to go good, you have to put in concerted effort. For things to go bad, you don't have to do anything. You can just go outside and stand, and things will get worse naturally. You'll get colder or whatever. You'll get hotter or something. So it's good that we're focused on that from an evolutionary perspective. This is what helps us survive, is to pay more attention to negative things than positive things. And the literature in psychology is pretty clear about this, that we have more. For example, we have more words that describe negative emotions than positive emotions. If you give people, choices between things, they're more likely to notice the negative things than the positive things and focus on those. And there are more things that hurt than feel good. We have erogenous zones, but there's far more ways for your body to feel pain than to feel pleasure, and those sorts of things. So I fully understand the psychology of pessimism, negativism, apocalyptic thinking.
Doomsday planning.
This is why there are almost no movies about utopian societies where everything is great. It would be a boring movie. What makes a movie or a novel interesting is when things look like they're great, but then they go bad. And so the hero has to come in and save the day and turn things around and get us back on track. But if something bad didn't happen, it would be a boring story. So our senses, our brains are geared toward really focusing on negative things.
Okay, and I guess once we realise that, then it takes a little bit of the sting and the power out of it. It's an evolutionary thing, and so we can maybe not get so pessimistic about it. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, if you think about it, a politician or a religious leader, they can devote their entire lives to doing good work for humanity, and the whole thing can be wiped out with a single affair or embezzlement or some thing, some little one bad thing can wipe out a career of good things. And that's again our focus, our obsession with celebrities falling. It's one thing to track a celebrity's climb toward fame and fortune, but what we really like is to watch them fall. Like, oh yeah, there's a little bit of Schadenfreude there where we want to see the mighty taken down, and there's something about that this pessimism bias we have. It's unfortunate in the sense because it blinds us to the things we have been doing right that we should do more of because we're too focused on the things we've been doing wrong. Again, don't ignore the things we've been doing wrong because we got to fix them, but let's not forget, the things that are good.
Mm. So what keeps you up at night when you look at the world today then? If you're not so concerned by all this, the immediate news that maybe some of us are concerned with, what does concern you when you look at it almost from a bird's eye view point of view?
Well, I'm worried about my weight. It's New Year's, so I'm going to lose some weight here. The usual personal stuff, of course. I'd like to make more money. I hope my books sell well. I hope my family stays healthy. I hope I don't get cancer or Alzheimer's, and, those sorts of things. But I guess collectively or politically or whatever, I'm not as concerned about Trump as a lot of Americans are. I don't think any one person has the kind of power that, say, a Napoleon or even a Hitler half a century ago, or three-quarters of a century ago had. I don't think any one person could do that much harm, so I'm not too worried about that. I am concerned about things like Putin and his efforts to kind of cobble together a USSR type nation again. Syria, of course, is a mess, and there is still racial tensions. America is very black and white, and now I'm worried about the backlash against cops. Actually, there's more cop killings now than there's been in decades because of this backlash and the perceived threat that cops kill black people just for the fun of it, which is not true. And so those are the sorts of things that worry me a little bit. Long term, I guess maybe global warming. Although I'm not a global warming doomsdayer, I think global warming is real and it's human caused. But I think we could do something about it. I'm a big fan of technological, scientific solutions. Just show people a way to make money on global warming, and this problem will be solved. I mean, I call it the Elon Musk model. All right, let's just make electric cars and solar panels on every house. I mean, I live in California. When you fly like from LA across east across the desert, it's like just endless sunshine and endless homes with no solar panels. I mean, every single building in America should have solar panels. Germany has more solar panels than America, and they're in the clouds most of the time. So, come on, people. We can do this technologically, but the economics has to be there.
Mm. And you're a big advocate and believer in sort of science and reason. Do you believe that science and reason is sort of can be like a solution to all issues, or there's some things where it's just not appropriate?
Well, I'm pretty much super pro. Just do it for everything. I mean, Like if you get married, you should make a list, pros and cons. This is what Charles Darwin did, for and against. And he had a long list and it came out, well, all right, I guess I'll get married. Now, I know that sounds kind of cold, but in a way we do that anyway. Subjectively in our minds, we weigh how much we like this person or how we feel about them. But really, those emotions are proxies for something else. It's a deeper calculation. And so evolutionary psychologists, for example, and this is not a fun way to think about romantic love, but they show us that the kinds of features we find attractive in other people, symmetrical faces, clear complexion, hour-shaped glass in women, more of a pyramid-shaped figure in men, broad shoulders, narrow waist, and so on. Those actually are proxies for physical health, genetic health. That probably that would be a good person that you find attractive to have you share your genes with into the next generation, which is what evolution does. So in a way, we're already doing those kinds of calculations that sound cold and unromantic. So the whole internet dating service thing, all it's doing is quantifying what we already do anyway. And so it doesn't sound romantic, but in a way, our emotions evolved to drive us to do things that are probably good for passing on your genes into the next generation for evolution, that kind of thing.
So if our objective is, the continuation of the species, passing on the genes, then I can understand that, empirical sort of scientific, but then I don't know, because on the one hand, I'm just science. On the other hand, I'm just matters of the heart, and those kind of things. I don't know. Can it go too far? Is it on a pendulum, or can it go too far when we are making decisions just empirically where they need, I don't know,
Well, you can certainly so the experience of a sunset or love or whatever is different from our talking about, well, what is it?
Sure.
Well, love, there's an increase in oxytocin and dopamine when you think about your beloved in a brain scanner. I can see where it's happening right there in the dopaminergic neurons or whatever. But of course, that's a separate thing from you actually feeling that wonderful feeling of, or whatever, appreciation of art, music, and so forth. So it doesn't take anything away from the qualitative experience, what neuroscientists call qualia, the qualitative experience of something. Science doesn't take anything away from that. It has really nothing to do with it, and only adds to it, because you can stand there at a sunset, and go, well, okay, so the red does this, or you're making love with your partner, and it's like, wow, so I just got a boost of oxytocin. Well, I don't recommend doing that, and don't narrate it. But we can, at least we can understand it, and so the work of Helen Fisher, for example, the anthropologist who does this, she shows why love is so addicting, because it has the same effects in the brain that cocaine and chocolate do. That it triggers the same neurons to fire and release dopamine and oxytocin and all these little love hormones, and this is why people go so crazy about obsessed with their loved one. They can't stop thinking about them, or in the case of some men, they get violent about it. Jealousy is kind of a negative emotion, but it's an emotion that evolved to drive us to make guard, to protect our genetic interests, essentially. Again, that doesn't sound very romantic, but we got to understand why people do what they do. So you can have both, really. You don't have to. You can have all the science you want and still go out and have some fun.
Belief and believing in things is our natural state. We want to believe in things, don't we?
Well, yeah. It's so the default action of the brain is to, the moment you comprehend an idea, you just believe it. It must be true, or else why would you be comprehending it? So skepticism is an additional cognitive load, another step you have to take to say, now that I comprehend it, I wonder if it's true. I got the claim, the person makes the claim, but is the claim true? That takes another step. And this is why skepticism does not come naturally. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like a load of work, it'd just be so much easier to believe this rather than having to comprehend it and then go a step further and play the devil's advocate to your own brain and say, wait a minute, Shermer, maybe I'd really like it to be this way, but maybe it isn't actually that way. And, it's like I was having a discussion with Dan Dennett yesterday about Snowden. At first I didn't like what Snowden did with the WikiLeaks thing, and then I saw him at TED. remote location in Moscow. Okay. But he came across totally, completely honest and full of integrity and, freedom lover. And I'm a big freedom lover guy, big libertarian. I was like, yes, government overreach, the NSA, no good. I love this guy. But this is just reinforcing what I want to be true. Like, yes, everything yes. And then I'm reading this article the other day in the Wall Street Journal about, maybe he wasn't the good guy, all this. I'm like, oh no. And see that, and I don't like reading that. I kind of have to force myself because I'd rather just have things be true the way I want them to be true. So even for me, Mr. Skeptic, it's an effort. I'd rather just lay back and go, here I am in Santa Barbara. I'm going to the beach. Life is great. And everything is the way I want it to be. Unfortunately, it isn't always that way.
And humans, we're pattern seekers, aren't we? And so this has been both beneficial for us, spotting maybe risks, and I think you described it as you can hear sort of like a rustle in the wind, and it's like, oh, is this just the wind, or is that maybe a saber-toothed tiger ready to pounce at you back? So this is a good thing that we spot patterns, and this has helped us evolutionarily.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It's also problematic, isn't it?
Well, it leads to things like conspiracy thinking, where you think, well, there's a pattern. Well, maybe there's an even deeper pattern. The Illuminati. There's 12 guys in London smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and deciding the economies of the world and the political organizations of the world. So our brains just naturally go to that. But as you said, finding patterns is good. Is global warming real or isn't it? Are we causing it or not? That's a pattern. And in principle, science should be able to answer that question. When did the universe begin? Is it expanding forever? Is it going to collapse? That's a pattern, and we can figure it out. Unfortunately, again, like with the default position is just to believe it. The moment you put a pattern together, A is connected to B to C to D, then you think, well, it must be real. Princess Diana was murdered by the royal family. Blah blah, and then you start looking for evidence to fit it. They just go through the daily newspaper or whatever. Oh, look what I just found. There must be some connection. That's patternicity, but that's not good, because then our brains are then acting more like lawyers, marshaling evidence in support of your client, in this case your belief, rather than being the devil's advocate and saying, wait a minute, what would it take to falsify my belief? I want this to be true. I think this is true. Now, what would it take for me to change my mind? And that's a much, much harder thing to do. It's hard to even think of examples that don't fit. And this is why we really need to force ourselves to read newspapers or magazines and opinions that we don't like. I do this. I'm kind of libertarian, so I can find fault with both liberals and conservatives. But I force myself to listen to people that I don't agree with, just so I can think, well, wait a minute, Shermer, maybe I'm wrong about this. So it forces me to change my mind. Like on gun control, I changed my mind. Death penalty, I changed my mind. I used to be for it, in favor, just supportive of the victims' families. But then I, sort of rationally analyzed it by people that are critical of the death penalty, who I normally don't like. I don't agree with them. They're uber liberal, California, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, nope, you know what? I think they're right. And I changed my mind. It's really hard to do that. I'm not saying I did anything special. I'm like everybody else. I'd rather just blindly go on believing what I want to be true.
Yeah. And taking a bit of a segue, but taking a sort of a look at, rather than just immediate, but looking at 100 years, 200 years, we can now got so much research and data showing that, for example, we know that democracies are better than dictatorships. Do you believe that democracy is sort of the best possible model, or do you feel that there's better models out there, and in the future we'll move towards a next one? So for the time being, democracy, we're happy with it. It's good. It's better than the one before. But
right.
Are there better models? Do you think we're going to move into other ones, or do you think, hey, we've got it down?
I'd like to see more experiments, actually social experiments, run on smaller scales, maybe in cities or city-states. I predict that the future, in the last chapter of The Moral Arc, I talked about the possible decline and fall of the nation state as a concept. It's not that old. It's only been around for a few centuries. Before the nation state, like Europe was filled with, thousands of small political entities. They weren't democracies, so that's not good. But these huge nation states have what I fear is too much power, and it leads to nationalism and tribalism on a bigger scale. I'd rather, and I predict, to see the return of the city-state, because most people live in cities now. More than 50% of the world lives in cities. And I think by 2100, it's going to be like 3/4 of the world will live in cities. Cities are where the action is. So it could be that the mayor is going to be the most powerful person, not on earth, but there. I call it the fixing the potholes problem. I'm not worried about the war in Syria. I'm worried about the pothole out in my street. And maybe there'd be fewer international wars if there were no nations to fight other nations. Now, I mean, that sounds kind of Peter, Paul, and Mary and California-ish. But I think if we direct the economic power centers at cities rather than nations, that could change how democracies work or how political systems work, and maybe there'd be some experiments. There are some of these Silicon Valley type visionaries like Peter Thiel, who co-founded PayPal.
Yeah.
And he also backs this movement called seasteading. And no one's actually done this yet, but where you just go out to sea and you just plant your flag and you put together a bunch of boats or floating rafts and you just expand out several acres and you have a little nation state. Now, of course, could be pirates come by and steal your stuff, but so you need protection, and pretty soon you're gonna end up with another political unit like we have. But the idea was, let's just go do that and try that and see what happens. Or maybe we have a colony on Mars. Elon Musk, let's go to Mars. Let's send 1,000 people to Mars. Oh, okay. And so maybe they would try a new political system. Okay, instead of democracy, let's try whatever, X. We'll just call it X. I can't think of what it would be. But maybe, somebody, one of these innovative thinkers that come up with something new, it's like, hey, that's even better than democracy. Or maybe it's less worse than democracy, which is less worse than the other ones.
I like that. So almost, like give it. Yeah, no, I think that's quite a fun approach. Almost like the X Prize for a better sort of society.
Yes, I would favor an X Prize like that. Although this has been tried, of course, in science fiction and in novels where people end up on an island somewhere and without a government, things fall apart. Or I think it was either Simpsons or Family Guy episode where they decided, it was the rise of the Tea Party. So it was like, yes, let's cancel the government entirely. We don't need government. Yeah, we don't need government. So they canceled the government. And then all of a sudden, trash is piling up. Over the course of the week. Hey, I got this idea. Okay, let's all chip in to a common pool, and then we'll hire somebody to pick up the trash. Yeah. Well, what if somebody doesn't want to chip into it? We'll make them chip into it. It's like, okay, this is sounding a lot like taxes. In other words, they ended up with the same system they started with that they dismantled. So it could be that that's what would happen. We would end up right back to where we are. But, maybe there'd be long-term improvement. Who knows?
What is the hedonic treadmill all about?
The hedonic treadmill. Well, this is it's a big thing in California, where that the idea that if I only had this much more stuff, money, cars, whatever, bigger house, I would be that much happier. But the problem is that, and that may be true for you personally, but the moment everyone else is at that level, then it's like, well, I want to be that much higher, and then that much higher. So the trends the standards keep getting raised. So you're like on a treadmill, and it doesn't matter how much you get. So really, you have to find happiness within. And so the research on this is pretty interesting. Do people that make more money, are they happier? Well, yes, actually. You got to have enough money to have 3 square meals a day, a roof over your head, health care, just the basics of life. And if you don't have that, you really aren't. Life is not as good. And then as you scale up, it's like, well, yeah, it would be nicer if I had a slightly better car, and it is nicer. And I kind of feel like when I fly business class versus coach, yeah, I'm a little happier when I get off at the other end of the country or in Europe from LA when I've flown in business class. So I'm happier, But if I own my own jet, would I be even happier? I don't know, because then you got to maintain the thing, you got to spend all this money to keep that lifestyle. So you end up on this treadmill. Maybe it's better to just kind of aim for some of that a little bit, just to improve your life just a little, but find peace and happiness within. So this is my Deepak Chopra moment. Okay, I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to sit on the beach and meditate. It doesn't matter how much stuff I have or don't have. I'm just going to be happy within. Okay, so maybe there's some blend there. And I know Deepak Chopra. He's a good friend. And believe me, he's a totally spiritual guy, but he's also a very, very materially happy guy too. He has a very good life, both spiritually and materialistically. And so I look at that and go, yeah, okay, maybe it's all right to have both.
What does a fulfilled life mean to you?
Well, ultimately, to me, first, obviously, your own physical health, that you're not feeling miserable every day. But then beyond that, beyond yourself, family and friends, having some kind of social circle, community of people that you like hanging out with. In my case, I have my cycling friends, my science friends, and just, family. Love, we talked about love, getting that hit of oxytocin and dopamine, okay, I like that. But everybody likes that. And I think it's good to have a partner or somebody you love and are connected to. It doesn't have to be marriage or what. I'm not going to get into all the, trans blah blah, but this and it. Just having somebody you care for. Having kids, whatever, family, whatever works for you. That's it. And then beyond that. So here, the kind of the spiritual thing is, having something beyond even that. Whether it's working for a nonprofit, an NGO, a political movement, a cause, something that's beyond you. So here, I even think science can contribute to this in the sense that if you're working on this grand problem, like maybe an astrophysicist wants to understand the origins of the universe. Wow, that is big. That's huge. And for me, like when I go to telescopes, I like to visit observatories around the world and go inside the dome and look up. And it's a lot like going inside Chartres Cathedral or the Dome in Cologne or St. Paul's Cathedral. It really is inspirational. It is kind of awesome, in terms of awe-inspiring, which is why I want to take that word away, spiritualism, from religion, because they've had a monopoly on it. Everybody can be spiritual. It's my friend Deepak Chopra. He's always telling me, you can be spiritual, Michael. You can be spiritual. Okay, but I'm an atheist. It's okay. You can be an atheist and be spiritual. Okay. And so, but we all can do that in our own way. So for me, going to an observatory, thinking about science or just trying to make the world a better place, like my book, The Moral Arc. For me, it was kind of a spirit, taking me out of myself and just looking at the world as a whole, the last 500 years. That's anything that takes you out of yourself. And so people that have beyond meaningful work, it's good to have a reason to get up in the morning and get out the door and go do something. But even beyond that, just to make money, is to do something that helps other people, makes the world a slightly better place. So I call it protopia. It's not my word. It's Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired magazine. He coined this word. So forget utopia. We're never going to get there. And don't go for dystopia, because things could fall apart. Protopia, just make the world slightly better today than it was yesterday, slightly better tomorrow than it was today. Just do something, even just saying hi to somebody, just be nice, give a nice extra tip at the restaurant, something, anything. Volunteer, make your end of the year donation. Oh, too late, it's the 3rd of January. But anyway, helping a cause, helping poor people, anything like that. Anything that takes you out of yourself seems to do the trick to make you feel a deeper, more spiritual person, and therefore a more fulfilled person.
I love that, protopia. I'm gonna read more about that. I love that. I kind of agree with that philosophy. Like it brings it to home. Like you can do that. That's small actionable things that we can all start doing today. And actually, that kind of maybe the answer to the next question. I was going to say, what is one thing our listeners can start doing today that will have a good impact on their lives? And
yeah, well, it's like and I like the idea of protopia too, because it's small steps. Because when I look at people like Bill Gates, he's saving Africa. Oh my God, what am I doing? Nothing. It makes me feel, useless. But it's, okay, don't look at don't compare yourself to Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. Just log on to like Peter Singer's site, the Life You Can Save, and he's got on there, like a dozen different charities. Like this one buys mosquito nets for families in Africa so they don't get malaria. Okay, just give them $5. That helps, really. $50, whatever you can give, just a little bit. You don't have to be Bill Gates, just a tiny little bit. And that's the sort of thing you can do. Or, if you don't want to give charity, whatever, just be nice to people. Just try to say something nice to somebody. Try to think of one positive thought for today. While you're watching the news, getting depressed, excuse me, just remember, who was that guy, that Shermer guy? Oh, yeah. he said things are getting better. Maybe I'll just think about that for a minute or look up something that's positive. I don't know. I'm not a big guru kind of guy. I'm not a Tony Robbins. I'm like, go out there and, change your, I'm not one of those kind of guys. But really, we can all make a difference. And we do. We really can make a difference. Hard to see, but cumulatively, all of us together are kind of pushing the arc of the moral universe towards, truth, justice, and freedom.
Last but not least, how can people find out more? I love that. I needed no more words after it. How can people find out more about you and your work? Where can we send them?
Well, Skeptic.com is the webpage for my magazine, and MichaelShermer.com has my personal articles and all that sort of stuff. And you could go to Wikipedia or Amazon or whatever to find my writings and whatnot. So that's it. Skeptic.com really is the best place to go.
Michael, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise, cheers, and go out and be protopian.
I'm going to. That's my. This is perfect. This is going to be our first interview of the New Year's of January. Yes. So New Year's resolutions, everyone, be protopian.
It's going to be a good year. 2017 is going to be our year.